Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Deciding Factor podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Alton.
And Barb's here with us again today. How are you doing, Barb?
Doing good. Hi, guys.
So today's guest is Luke Hohmann, and he is going to be talking to us about giving money to kids and whether that might actually save democracy. And, of course, we've already done the show, so, Alton, what do you think of it?
Well, I'll have to admit that he used a lot of big words that I'm not really sure what he said, so I hope everyone's come prepared. You've had your coffee, and you're ready to go in deep on this one, and he's got a lot of good stuff to offer, and I think it was one of our more dynamic podcasts that we've had where we get a lot of back and forth here, and I like it, and I think if you're listening, you're going to enjoy it as well.
And if you're a big Barb fan, she goes head-to-head with Luke once or twice just to dig in and find out some answers to some questions.
So politely, so pleasantly. But you're missing the important part of this show. From the beginning of the show to the end, Luke teaches us how to say the word participatory.
He taught y'all.
Well, yeah. I heard John say it at the end, so I think it's
avoided
really
saying it. Still avoiding it.
Yes. If you like tongue twisters, say it 10 times fast. And let us know how it turns out. Make sure you record it and send it to us on Facebook or Instagram. We'd love to see it. All right, guys. Make sure you also check out our Deciding Factor Extra because Luke also joins us for a show on there. And we actually did a new segment. What was it, Barb?
Coulda, shoulda, woulda, where we solve the silliest things people have done. Yeah.
All right. Make sure you share your comments with us, and we will see you on this episode of The Deciding Factor.
Everyday life issues broken down to help you build your own opinions on the issues that matter most. Coming to you from Austin, Texas, this is The Deciding Factor with your host, Alton Hill and John Herzog.
All right, guys, we're back. So like we said, we're going to talk about democracy and whether giving money to kids would be the way to save it. So we have our guest, Luke Hohmann. And Barb, why don't you share with us about Luke?
Luke Hohmann is founder and CEO of FirstRoot, a benefit corporation devoted to creating great economic equality. A serial entrepreneur, Luke's last company, say it for me, Luke. Conteneo, thank you. Just escaped my brain. Was an enterprise software company that helped global companies manage investment portfolios using participatory budgeting. Luke is now leveraging the experience he gained working with some of the world's largest companies to help prepare our children for their future by bringing participatory budgeting into schools to teach financial literacy, civics, and design thinking. Thank you for being here, Luke.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And that was a brilliant introduction. You managed to say participatory budgeting like 4 times without tripping over it. Mm-hmm. It's a mouthful. So we often just say PB.
Like peanut butter.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like participatory budgeting.
Okay, got it.
So Luke, before we get involved in participatory budgeting, I can't believe I made that.
Boom.
Tell us exactly.
We need a sound effect for that.
Tell us exactly what that really means, because I know nothing about it before you ever even talked to me.
Well, simply put, it's a mechanism by which a group of people decide how to invest shared resources. So let's take the business context. The annual budgeting process in most companies is garbage. You sit down and you're supposed to work with all your colleagues during the year until the end of the year budgeting, and then you fight over the limited budget. And so what I had done about a decade ago is I started to really try and design more collaborative techniques to help organizations make investment and budgeting decisions. And simply put, let's say the 5 of us are working for a company, and we're in the marketing department. Alton would understand this. And we probably have like 30 good... Pardon? Me. All 5 of us. Fourth. Sorry. All 4 of us. No, I was seeing myself and counting myself. See, it's dangerous. Oh, man. Right. And people are going to watch going, yeah, he's a CEO. Sorry, can't count. So 4 of us are in marketing. And let's say our budget is $20 million. And we've got about 7 good ideas, 8 good ideas, but they're all together, they exceed 20 million. Well, most of the time, organizations are just going to fight over that money. But what we do is we take that budget and we give each of us an equal amount. So you got 5, Barbara's got 5, Alden's got 5, and I've got 5. And then when we want to fund something, we fund it together. We don't have to fund it equally, right? Barbara might put in 3 million and John puts in 1 and I put in 1, but we have to fund it together. And then we start to make those choices together. So we take something that was competitive and pretty nasty and make it collaborative. And all we're doing is we're taking those insights and we're bringing it into schools. And that's what happened to me. I was working with some of the world's largest companies, BMW, Daimler, Salesforce, eBay, Cisco, helping their global distributed teams make these kinds of decisions. And I started to do it with cities, and then I started to do it in schools. And the light bulb went on when I saw how kids responded to a simple idea. We're going to give them some money, and they're going to collaboratively figure out how to invest it in the school.
Wow.
Nice. So like instead of allowing some board to just dictate where the money is going, like some portion of this budget was allocated to the kids in the school. Now, what ages are these? I'm imagining that this is high schoolers. Is that true?
Well, I've done participatory budgeting in elementary schools, in middle schools, and in high schools.
Wow.
Now, it is true that you do have to change things a little bit to match the cognitive capabilities of a child. But children as young as kindergarten and first grade, they understand purchase requests. They understand goals. They understand, mom and dad make money and they have to spend money. They may not understand, collateralized debt obligations or, the difference between a 30-year and a 15-year mortgage, but they can understand basic concepts of financial literacy. And from there, we can start to have them teach, very simple things like, yes, we want playground equipment and we want to get a kiln. Okay, we can't afford both of them. How do we choose? If we start to teach our children these concepts at an early age, we can also start to rope in civics. Like, for example, is this proposal benefiting as many kids in the school as possible? Or maybe there's an underserved population in the school who could use a little extra help. And this proposal, even though not everyone would benefit, but a group of kids in need would benefit. We can bring those conversations to the kids.
So can I ask, when you're implementing it in a school, and I like how you explain that you're teaching them civic responsibility, where are they told that the money comes from? How do they get
the money comes from 3 sources. Source number 1 is most principals in a school have a bit of discretionary funding, a little bit of slot money, if you will. So that's source number 1. And I should actually frame the answer first is how much money do we give the kids? And I'm going to give you kind of a consultant's answer, and then I'll give you a number. The consultant's answer is we want to give the kids enough money to feel meaningful to the kids, but not so much money that the parents are going to get nervous and take over. So if I give kids in an elementary school $2,000, the parents aren't going to freak out. If I gave them $200,000, the parents would probably want to have control over the money.
I'd freak out if someone gave my 6-year-old $2,000.
Well, it's the whole school, not just your 6-year-old.
Gotcha. Okay, but what I'm wondering, so, I mean, where do they, I was thinking
and where does it come from? I got to follow up with that. Yeah, sorry.
But as far as they're told, do they understand?
We tell them. We tell them explicitly.
Like, taxpayers
you tell them explicitly.
Have given you this money. All your neighbors have given you this money.
If the source is the principal or the school district, it's taxpayers. If the source is the PTA, then we tell them the PTA. We're actually doing an experiment right now with Salesforce where their corporate social responsibility arm is making a donation to a high school in San Mateo, California, and those kids know it's coming from Salesforce. Now, we don't mean it in a schmarmy marketing way, but a lot of corporations do have corporate social responsibility funds that are helping education. And so, and one school that we work with, Purdue Polytechnic High School in Indianapolis, those kids raise their own funds through a GoFundMe. And that was actually part of the teacher's lesson plan. Like, learn how to communicate on a platform like a GoFundMe. So there's a few different sources, but you absolutely need to tell the kids the source of the money to help them realize how money works and where schools are funded.
I think I'd be a little upset if I heard that they were raising money through GoFundMe instead of just using the tax money. I'd be a little pissed off with that one.
You could be, but the way that teacher framed it, it was part of a learning experience, and the lesson was, what's the different structure of corporate entities, right? There's nonprofits, there's for-profits, there's benefit corporations. So she was integrating that into a lesson plan about entity structure. What are the different kinds of, S corps, C corps, LLCs, LLPs, and then they were talking about, like, you could raise money, and
I think you lost.
So it was part of a lesson plan.
There.
No, I know what an LLC is. It's something about licking popsicles. I forget. No, I want to. Here's what I'm stuck on in my brain. To bigger picture.
Sure.
Doesn't it seem like if we're wanting to, I like the goal of raising responsible citizens, and I like the idea of kids, young age, learning what does it mean? Why is it that we choose one thing over the other? That all seems great. The thing that I'm not tracking with, and I think you're going to have a great answer to, is...
well, I hope.
Yeah, well, I hope so too, actually, because it'll suck otherwise. But what I'm wondering is, it sounds like we're teaching kids how to grow up assuming that they're entitled to handouts from other people and how they ought to use them. I'm curious why aren't they having to earn the money? Why don't they do work because I mean, what I feel like I'm seeing in the... are we allowed to make fun of millennials here? Do we have millennials?
Oh gosh, sure. Okay, I have four. Okay. I have 4 kids. And,
okay, I feel like there's this idea like the government ought to be paying for my college. I mean, education is a benefit we should all have. They ought to be. Do we want to raise more kids that think that I should give them money because I'm a citizen and they don't want to work?
I don't think that that's the goal. So, and what I hate about being an interviewee is that I hate for my inability to express something to be associated with the actual concept itself. And so, yes, it's you're correct. It would be absolutely easy for a kid to go through a participatory budgeting process and say, wow, this is great. I'm given money. I don't have to earn it. I don't have to worry about it. I get to spend it. This is great. I love it. I'm hopeful, though, that we're building two pairs of curriculum, a curriculum around financial literacy and a curriculum around civics. And if the school uses our curriculum around civics, there's lessons in it about where does money come from. It comes from taxpayers, and you have to pay that tax, right? And then the question becomes, in participatory budgeting, is it appropriate to have this notion of a handout? And I don't feel like I'm doing a super great articulation of this, but I'm actually kind of agreeing with you. I think that is the framing that you've suggested is a potential danger point, and we have to make sure that our kids know. Look, I'm not an anarchist, right? I don't actually want to say we don't need a government, right? Because that actually society has proven over thousands and thousands of years that we do need some reasonable structure of how we live together. And there's benefit, like sewage. I kind of am down with sewage. I'm kind of down with trash being taken in the streets.
We're still talking
I'm
about
down with all
the
that.
government, aren't we? That's the sewage and the trash and
Yeah. No,
sorry. He was just sitting there.
That's going to be my favorite line of the podcast.
It was a layup. It's just like
Luke didn't know what to do with that statement. He was like,
it's a fastball. It's a fastball over center plate. I'm going to take it out of here.
Luke. Let's step back though, because in talking with you off air, you gave me an example. Why don't you give us one of those really good examples about how you have seen this work, especially in the schools?
Well, so one of my favorite examples, and this happens quite a lot, is when you actually look at, and before I go on, we can't, Barbara, did I reasonably answer your question?
I promise to come back to it.
Great. So let's look at some examples.
Okay.
Because we do see concerns, right? Adults will say, "Oh, what's going to happen if I give kids money? They're going to spend it on a pizza party. They're going to waste it." Well, first, one of the things that we know about financial literacy is that you really shouldn't judge how other people spend money, right? If you are, John, if you are a person who doesn't go on big vacations so you can afford, nicer wine at home, and John drinks swill so he can go on vacations, you shouldn't judge each other. Although that would explain why Alton comes over to your house for dinner, because he knows he gets good wine. So we want to be careful about making judgments on other people's choices. But that said, we do see this. Parents are concerned. Adults are concerned. Oh, what are the kids going to do with the money? When you actually analyze what the kids choose with the money, it's mostly infrastructure. So one school that we worked with in my own city, Sunnyvale, California, the kids in the middle school, 1 year they bought a 3D printer for the art lab so they could start to prepare for the future of work. They were hearing about 3D printer. Being California, 1 year they bought a water bottle refilling station to replace the old drinking fountain so they could refill their water bottles that they're coulda, shoulda, woulda,
Nice.
without the straws, bringing to school. Kids in New York City, a couple of times. This is one of those ones where the use of participatory budgeting in the school actually influenced the school district spending. They went through a PB program, and the kids in the high school chose bathroom renovations. And it got up to the principal, and the principal's like, "What? The kids should not be having to spend money on bathroom renovations. What is going on?" Well, now think about when you were in high school. Did you use the same bathroom as the teachers? No.
I don't know.
I don't think
No,
I
we
used the
didn't.
bathroom in high school. I think
Yeah,
it was
okay,
just,
well.
totally just walk on by. That's not.
Boys didn't have doors. That pissed me off.
Well, but I mean, most of the time in high schools, right, the bathroom of the kids is not the bathroom of the teachers. So the teacher's bathroom, of course, is nice, and the kids not as much. And so what you're seeing is, one of the truisms we know from business and society is people who are close to a lived experience have a valid perspective, and we want to hear that. And so we want to have a mechanism where we are acquiring data. And other times, kids will renovate cafeterias. They buy chemistry equipment. They buy a lot of times they buy gym equipment or band equipment because they use the instruments. They know what's needed. They don't, waste the money in terms of like, I want to, go on a party.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like almost however you're implementing this, there's some form of responsibility communicated, or even like I'm imagining some sort of legacy in that, like, yeah, I participated in securing this new weightlifting equipment, or, that chemistry stuff. That was what we gave to the people that would be coming through, or, whatever. Right. And I don't know if there's some plaque to show that they worked towards that or whatever.
Well, I haven't seen that in schools, but that's certainly a possibility. And let's take a step back, right? When I say participatory budgeting, it's not like we drive by, chuck some money out of the window and say, "Good luck, kids." We actually, it's completely different. We guide them through a structured, here you go. Right? We guide them through a process. It's 5 phases. Phase 1 is planning. And we sit down and the kids work through what's the theme, who should be included, should the teachers be included, should our parents be included, what's the definition of community. Phase 2, divergent thinking. And this is where we start to rope in design thinking. Like, what are the problems we want to solve? What are possible ways to solve those? Those are proposals. Then we move into phase 3, which is refinement. Now that you've got ideas, how much do they cost? Can they be implemented? Is there additional things that you can do to lower the cost? Like, if you want to get a mural painted, you could have a painter do it, or you could have your parents come in with you over the weekend and do it. So they refine those ideas. And they figure out, is it capital expenditure? Is it operating expenses? Is it a policy change? Eventually, that gets boiled down into the items that can fit the theme and fit the budget. Those go into a ballot. The kids vote. They look at the voting results, and they ratify them. Then when the votes are ratified, the results are ratified, they move into implementation. And what we encourage the kids to do is, as they're creating these ideas and refinement, we ask them to consider, what impact would this make in your school? Or what can you imagine what the impact would be? So now in implementation, we can say, well, did you get the impact that you were expecting? So it's a structured process. And it usually takes between 6 and 12 weeks. So about a month and a half to 3 months is how long it takes, because you're guiding the kids through these activities. In one school that we worked with, the Academy of American Studies in Queens, the teacher actually created assignments where, okay, you have to find another proposal that you didn't create and make comments on that proposal about what is good and what's not so good about that particular proposal. So we're starting to get them to think about other people's opinion, because that's what separates a purchase decision from an investment decision. It's how you talk with other people. My wife and I are both runners. If we do pretty decent mileage, right? So if I go out and get a new pair of running shoes, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, it's a frequent purchase. It's not a terribly lot of money. Now, I don't really, I love you, honey, but I don't really care about your opinion about my running shoes. I do care about the opinion of the person who's selling me the shoes, because I go to a running store, right? And the salespeople are actually knowledgeable about what the shoes do. But if, you know those commercials, right, where it's, hey, honey, I bought you a car and there's a big red bow on it. Oh, do you think she'd be a little upset if I just stuck a new car in the driveway with a bow on it without ever talking to her?
Yeah, I would probably...
Depends on how shiny it was. Yeah, I don't know. You can buy me a car, John. That's fine. Okay, here's the thing. I am stuck on a lot of things. I'm sorry. It seems
pick one.
It seems like if I'm just looking at it far enough away and I don't have my glasses on, okay, I like that. You're teaching, in theory, responsibility down the road. It does perturb me that there's no connection with work to the money, but they are making a connection that, money comes from taxpayers, right? And so here's what I'm sort of wondering. And I did earlier this year, I started reading the Federalist Papers because I'm like 25 years past due reading it. It's terrible. But it seems to me that you pitch this as the way to save democracy. Do you mind expounding on that? What do you mean by democracy when you say it? What do you mean by it needing to be saved? How does this connect?
Yeah, I simply can say that in the past, when I was in high school, and we wanted money for various things, we did, in a sense, work for it. We would have paper drives, and we would have car washes and things like that. So, Barbara, I want you to know that I think the idea of acquiring the money for the kids of participatory budgeting through some mechanism of work, sure, right? We're not saying that the only way to have money for the budget given to the kids is a handout. If a particular school's values or a particular implementation said, look, our value is that we really want the kids to work for it first, that'd be great. But it's still about having a shared conversation about democracy. And that's where the saving of democracy comes in, right? If you go to a website, there's websites out there where you can play a game on like balancing the federal budget. Right, you go to like the LA Times or the Washington Post. Let's go balance the federal budget, right? And let's say that you're moderately conservative or moderately liberal. I don't even care which one you are. You go to that website and you make some choices. Now, the first pass through those choices, you're going to be moderate but leaning towards your natural political preference, right? I'm moderately conservative, so I'm going to do these things and I'm going to look at the result. And you're going to go, oh crap, I'm not getting the result that I want fast enough. It is at that moment that you harden political will, because what you're going to do is you're going to take your natural vector and push it. You're going to go, I'm moderately conservative. Let me go more conservative. make more choices in the budget, make harder choices in that budget, and I'm going to get closer to what I want, which is a balanced budget. And it doesn't matter if you're conservative or liberal. Liberals will do the exact same thing. They're going to become more liberal. And they're doing that because they're in their own echo chamber. There's no conversation. There was a reason George Washington had a still, and as my understanding, didn't drink whiskey. Because he wanted to bring people together to have a conversation, and that's where we get the best form of democratic practices. When we are deliberating over a choice, we make better choices. So that's why I claim that this is part of saving democracy.
Okay. But we're a republic.
Okay. And still in a republic, you have things that are associated with the democratic deliberation and engagement. Before there's the republic, there still are policies that are being set, and there still are reasons to vote for a representative. And those choices deserve conversations.
They do, but I guess what I'm wondering is if we're teaching, if it seems like we're setting up a very particular worldview here, and I guess I'm wondering, is it a worldview that we as Americans want? I don't personally think that a democracy is the best thing for the United States. So when I hear about this, I think there's a reason that the Founding Fathers looked at this and said, wow, no other democracy in history has ever succeeded. We should look at why. And the Republic was a completely novel idea. Everything else had failed. In part because these individual parts of the community, they matter. Everybody's voice needs to get heard, but it doesn't in a democracy. Because you're going to hand all the kids a ballot. They're all going to vote. Not everybody's getting heard. Not everyone is getting, what they want. It's part of why we choose representatives. So I'm curious. Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on, Barb. Let's go back to the leadership podcast we did. In the leadership podcast we did, there's multiple styles that you can intertwine. So why couldn't we have both in certain aspects? We don't have to be hard set on one way. Right.
If you like how things are right now, then yeah. Because right now, as a nation, we've gone from being a republic, and there's been a tremendous push towards democracy. And it's why we have what we have right now. It's not very congruous. So I guess I'm just curious, thinking, what?
What do we have right now?
Sorry. We have a republic. No, but I mean, we still have our Constitution is technically the same, even though it's apparently no amendment is safe from being, changed. I guess I look at this and I think this is really important stuff. I love the idea that we're talking how things get paid for. It's interesting to me that it seems like we're teaching kids through participatory budgeting, one, that they have a say in this when maybe they don't have a reason to have a say in this. I don't know that we all decide everything for each other. Is that just me?
Well,
but you wouldn't. I mean, no one I know in the PB movement actually says turn over 100% of any budget to the plenary, right? That's not effective, right? And so when I want to be careful, Barbara. You don't want to engage in argument of reductio ad absurdum and then use that as the basis for the actual path that you're trying to chart. I would never say that I want to chuck the republic and go to a democracy, and I would never say I want to have every dollar handed over to citizens. I'll give you a different example. For more than a decade, I've been helping the city of San Jose produce participatory budgeting events where we bring in hundreds of citizens, both in person and online, and put them into small groups, and they talk. And a couple of things that we've learned in that process is normal citizens actually don't want to be involved in technical choices because they're actually smart enough to figure out that there are people who are trained about infrastructure, pipes, plumbing, power, roads, urban planning, urban density. Where is the hospital needed? Where is the police station needed? Where is the school needed? How big does that school need? What's the population growth? if you actually talk with people and give them an opportunity to deliberate, they'll kind of say, I want my elected officials to actually do their job and actually give me infrastructure, but they're not. They're short-term thinking. They're more focused on their next reelection, et cetera, et cetera. But that's also to say that, oh, wait, you get zero input in any part of the budget because we're a republic. That, again, that's reductio ad absurdum. That's too much.
But they vote. And even if we go back to the kids, please tell me if I'm wrong here because we homeschool, so I could be way wrong. Doesn't the district vote for the school board?
Well, they do, but the question then becomes, do you actually believe that a representative of a large city, just picking a city or a school, has the knowledge that I talked about earlier? Because they go to the kids' bathroom, they see the bike lanes that the kids ride on, and they realize, oh, they ride the bike lanes that the kids ride because the kids will tell you which bike lanes need new paint, which ones are unsafe. Oh, but our elected officials know that. No, they don't. If you need a better mechanism to frame this is a classic example of crowdsourcing the best information you can get from the people who have literally feet on the street, the lived experience of the kids, create better data that can then go into the decision-making process of the officials. So it's not an either or. It's how do we use both of these techniques to create the best outcomes we can.
So let me interject here. Like what I'm hearing, and maybe quick summary, is like maybe there's some discussion on how we implement these things, where the money comes from, but generally we can use this as a trainer or a path to maybe some different results. What I'm thinking about also is when we start talking about not necessarily schools as much, but our elected officials and how the money is spent. And maybe I don't want to actually help in deciding all of these things, but I certainly don't mind looking into them a little more as opposed to see who's padding whose bank accounts and those types of decisions, right? So, Luke, you were talking about corruption in some of these other countries, and tell us a little bit more about how this type of budgeting can either like shed light on certain types of corruption or maybe avoid that altogether.
Yeah, and I'm going to put a pin on two things that Barbara said. One was the homeschooling, and I want to come back to that. And I also want to talk about this notion of transitions. But let's talk a little bit about the history of participatory budgeting. It's generally credited from the United Nations as starting in Porto Alegre, Brazil in 1989. And it was generally created for two reasons. One, it was created to help fight corruption. Now, I'm not like we talked about before the show started. I'm not saying that America is completely corruption free, but we certainly have different kinds and different forms of corruption. And for example, if a city is going to make a bid for a project, it's typically an open bid. We can typically see what's happening. In other countries around the world, that's decidedly not the case. And so participatory budgeting was invented as a mechanism to do two things: help expose the budget process and the decision-making process so people could help fight corruption. And second, it was explicitly designed to try and bring in people whose voices were not historically heard. So people who, in some situations, only the wealthy people can actually vote, right? So we say that that's not true, but it's kind of true when you look at certain structures in voting. So in other countries, that's where it kind of started and spread. And now we're starting to see the value in bringing that into some of the aspects of what we're doing in schools. Does that cover what you were thinking, Alton?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just imagining that this idea is not just about educating a youth, right? It's also, in my mind, while maybe the jury is still out on how corrupt America is right now as a nation and what's happening. I almost feel like this is kind of like we have 3 different branches of government allegedly to protect us from the government doing too many stupid things at once. This seems like another facet to that here, government, you can spend this much budget, but there's got to be this much left for maybe citizens to weigh in on or something. Or
so Scotland, for example, they're moving towards 1% of the government's budget is available for participatory budgeting with citizens. And you could, to me, that seems like a meaningful number, right? Of getting the money distributed into local. I'm a huge fan of decentralization of decision making. Getting, when I've managed large, software teams and large organizations, I don't want to make every decision. I want to get those decisions as much as possible down into the hands of my employees. And I want, empowerment is a frou-frou word for most of the time. But if you actually give people money and you empower them, they kind of do good things with it. Right. And so I'm a big fan of trying to get that money down with appropriate controls, but nonetheless, and our civics curriculum, Alton, we actually have a section on corruption. Like how could this turn out badly? Right. Well, one kid has a dad who makes the basketball nets. So that kid proposes the basketball nets and tries to convince everyone else to, do we want to hide that from our kids, or do we want to expose that possibility to our kids and have them talk about, oh, by the way, if you saw this happening in high school or in middle school, how do you prepare for this in your adult life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I think that's great.
So let's let you go back to Barb real quick. And then after you do that, I've got one final question for you.
So I've got 2 things. One of the things that I want to talk about, and Barbara, if you've been homeschooling, you know that as humans age, their cognitive abilities do change, right? For example, usually kids who are very young have very absolute values of right and wrong. And, for example, if you ask a younger kid, is robbing a bank wrong? They'd say, yeah, it's wrong. You shouldn't rob a bank. But with an older kid, if you gave them a context and you said, you lost your job, your spouse is dying from cancer, you're out of money, is it acceptable to rob a bank? and the kids start to say, well, it's not such an easy choice, is it, right? Because
no, my kids would say no.
Well,
you're convincing me never to send someone to public school right here, right now.
My kids would say no, but they would say it's a pretty tough choice because I'm going to have someone I love die if I can't help them out.
You do.
Right?
You know what? We should have prefaced with this. My kids are also raised in the household of option C, where their mother would be like, seriously, you're going to tell me that your only choices are for your spouse to die or for you to rob a bank? Come on.
Okay, fair enough. And that's even better, right? So let's go with the option C. Part of our mission as a benefit corporation is that we have a family edition of our platform that comes out in a week, and it's going to be free. And we use these techniques in having conversations with our kids about family vacations, charitable donations, and home improvements. And so my kids have had conversations with us saying, true story, we were saving up for a dream vacation for me. I grew up in Buffalo, never... it's for me. I'll explain.
Our dream vacation, but it's for me.
Yeah, it's for me. But no, let me explain.
That's an answer right there, straight up.
I grew up. When I was growing up, I never could have imagined traveling outside the U.S. And through my work, I've traveled a lot of places, and I really wanted to give that gift of seeing a different part of the world to our kids. And we talked about it. We started saving, and we ended up deciding that we wanted to go to France. And we have friends in France, etc. And I'm standing in the kitchen, and I hear, there was a leak in our dishwasher, and over a year, this tiny little leak had seeped into our floorboards, expanded our floor so much that it cracked. There was, black mold and all, just nasty. I just remember standing there going, okay, all that money we've been saving, it's gone. And in that moment, we had an opportunity to talk to our kids about financial choices, why we wouldn't get a loan so we could keep the family vacation, but we would get a loan so we could repair the house, right? These really critical, important financial concepts are, to me, opportunities to engage in participatory discussions and participatory budgeting. And having those conversations, and I'd love for you, Barbara, to try it out at home. That's my pitch, to see if there's a way that you might be able to cover some concepts that would be about life skills. So I'll finalize this, John, with this. Life skills like civics and the ability to engage as a citizen in a republic includes more than just factual knowledge of the structure of the government. It also includes ability to look at proposals and make judgments. And it finally also includes an understanding of our personal disposition. In the political sphere, am I a more libertarian, more conservative, more liberal? In the financial sector, am I a little bit more risk tolerant, or am I a little bit more risk averse? Am I going to evaluate an investment based only on economic factors, or do I want to try and align an investment to possibly some social interest I have? Like, I care about good health. I care about nutrition. I care about the environment. I care about animals. Maybe I want to make investments that are aligned both from a financial return and some kind of an other return. These are the things that we have to teach. And that's why you need something that is active as opposed to just the factual knowledge that exists right now in schools. We need the kids to do something so that they have that experience.
So I'm going to leave you with my final question here, which is, if we were to decide that this is the way that things need to go, how would we make that change? How could someone listening today say, I want that for my kids, this needs to start taking place?
Yeah, so the simple answer is go to www.firstroot.co and grab the parent or the teacher resources and start to bring it into your school. The other element is that when I went to school at University of Michigan, I had the great fortune of working with Professor Carl Weick. And he wrote a paper in the early 70s that's considered pretty influential called The Strategy of Small Wins. And summarizing his very academic language, he says, look, when we look at social problems, we become overwhelmed, and therefore we don't do anything about it. Well, we can't fix any social problem if we just give up right at the start because it looks big. So the way to get there is what he coined the term, the strategy of small wins. Find something small, like really small, but make sure that it can be perceived as a win. And that way people don't notice it as it starts to build momentum. And as it builds momentum, the wins can compound and create a positive outcome. So our small win strategy is one classroom doing PB or one school doing PB. I don't have to have all 98,000 K through 12, all 134,000 total schools, plus another several 100,000 homeschoolers like Barbara all at once doing this. What we do need is a couple of schools getting started and demonstrating that they can create good results. And Barbara, there's probably problems with this process that even you haven't thought of. And that's okay, because I am an agile software developer. And in the technique known as agile software development, we run retrospectives every 2 weeks with our teams. And after every one of these sessions, we run a retrospective and we look at it and we examine it. What did we do? How could we have done better? Do we need to change our curriculum? Do we need to make sure that we're including the idea, like you said, and trust me, it's going to get into the curriculum. Is this a handout and our handout's good? And what's good about that? What's that? Like, you've already adjusted how my thinking is as we continue to enhance our curriculum, which is brilliant. And I love it. But that's what we have to do. We have to teach also that skill, that reflective feedback that moves forward. But John, if they want to make that change, they want to take that strategy of small wins with us, one classroom in one school, come to www.firstroot.co.
Man. Well, I do appreciate you coming on. I think I've learned quite a bit, whether Barb agrees or not.
I learned a lot. I enjoyed talking to you, Luke. That was fun.
Oh, Barbara,
This has
you were
been great.
You were sorry, guys. You were awesome, Barbara. That was great.
Likewise. You can come back anytime. This is fun.
Barb might not be back next time, but you can come back. But no, I'm just kidding. Barb's great. Actually, I did want to make the point though, when I was researching your topic, participatory budgeting has actually almost doubled since 2018 just here in the U.S. So clearly there's people out there making the change. So I'm glad to learn something new that I would have never learned otherwise.
Yeah, and I would say personally, I'll go on record. Possibly controversially, possibly not. I'm not a fan of defund the police. Like, really? I'm sorry. I think police and public servants do a valuable service, but I could certainly get behind. Are we investing the money in a way that is producing the outcomes that we're seeking? And should we have a conversation about that? Oh, I'm down with that. I'm just not down with let's defund the police. No.
Jiu-jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, adoptacop.com or .org, or I don't know what it is, but if all the cops knew Jiu-Jitsu, it would totally change things. Guaranteed.
There you go.
We need to do a podcast about that. That's what we need to do.
Tune in next week to hear us talk about it.
Tune in next week.
Okay.
That's on the next extras, right?
But seriously though, I feel like it's what you're talking about, Luke, and I don't want to spoil my deciding factor here, but it's like, here's a new tool or a new skill set. What can we do with that? And I think that's what I'm really hearing you say, and that there's a lot of impact that we can have if we put enough heads together. Yep. So thank you for coming on.
Oh my gosh, thank you. This was so fun. Sometimes I've done these kinds of things and you get a host who reads a list of questions. This was awesome.
John does try to get us to read the questions sometimes, but we're like, reading? What?
Well, that's for John.
Google Docs. I have them right there. If Barb could just figure out how to get on Google, then read them verbatim.
Maybe if I had been taught in a participatory way, then I would know how to do Google.
See what happens when I bring a guest on? Barb uses it against me. All right. Hey, Luke, seriously, though, we appreciate you coming on. Real quick, if our listeners want to follow you, harass you, or bug you, how can they reach you?
My slime trail is huge and easy. I'm at Luke Hohmann at Twitter. I'm easily found on LinkedIn. If you want to find me, just type in Luke Hohmann. You'll get me.
And it's Hohmann because there's an extra hidden H in there. So make sure
Hohmann. Yes.
All right, Luke, you have a good day. Appreciate you joining. And listeners, make sure you check out the extra segment that he joined us in, which was Shoulda, Coulda, Woulda. And that'll get you caught up on the reference that he made earlier. Appreciate it, Luke. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, guys. Well, I guess I kind of have my mind made up here, so y'all ready for the deciding factor?
Totally thought we just did it. Yes. Yes, we can.
All right, let's do it.
Now it's time for our deciding factor.
All right, so can we save democracy by giving kids money? I don't know that that's the right question that I want to ask, is the problem. I like this theory of participatory budgeting. Obviously, it sounds like you don't give kids all the money, you give them portions of it. One thing that stuck out to me, though, is our tax monies being given to them to use for whatever they might bring up. But he had mentioned that in one case where they had a GoFundMe account that they built up to go gain more money. No, use our tax money for the school and leave it at that. I mean, I honestly have a problem with sports venues And in high schools or junior highs, where they do all these fundraisers and ask for more money, that gets a little annoying. Like, the school has money, it should be spent that way. But when I went back to the leadership styles that I had mentioned to you, Barb, is he had made the reference to the principal came back during one of these budget things where the kids wanted to spend their money on the bathrooms, right? And he came back and said, what? Why are they spending money on bathrooms? That shouldn't take place. Obviously, we need to reevaluate. It's that moment right there that makes me think, see, we need the option to open up the people in charge. They need to see the bigger picture on things that they might not be aware of, whether it's because they don't care, they're too busy, or somebody else didn't do their job. You need to be able to see different views at all times. If you don't, then things don't get done that should be done. I mean, and it can be as simple as roads getting fixed or whatever it may be. Maybe it's too damn hot in the classrooms and they need to spend a little extra money on running the AC more. Or in Barb's case, you need more tornado protection right now. So,
more weather stripping on the door.
She's floating around. We just can't tell. So I like participatory budgeting. I would like to actually see it implemented to see some of the outcomes. I do see your fears that you listed, Barb. I get it. That would kind of bug me, but at the same time, it teaches leadership and it teaches accountability when it comes to spending money. It will benefit them in the business world later on, I believe. So I kind of like the idea. You're up, Barb.
I'm with you. I think it's the wrong question. No, I don't think we can save democracy by handing kids money, because I don't think that's the goal. I do think that his principles of communication, of teaching the people that use the services where it comes from and them being part of that decision, I think that's a great idea. Actually, as I was listening to you talk, I would want to maybe take it a step further. Personally, if we're going to, if the goal is to teach kids so that they grow up to be more functional adults than, us, I would want, I would want them to say, okay, I want this thing. I can't assume that I can just squeeze some other part of the school budget to get it. How are we going to earn the money? How are we going to do this? What are we going to decide to do without? And
from a homeschooling aspect.
No, I'm thinking from if you want to do it in schools, do it in schools. I think that, as a taxpayer, I'd be delighted to have an accountability from my school district as to where the money went. Because there would be things that would make me go, seriously? And maybe involving the kids in that would be a great way to get that done. My lone caveat in this is I would want more transparency about the why, about the worldview behind this, because I don't think this ends where he would hope it would end. I don't think we're raising more independent citizens just by this. I think it could be a part of a larger push to teach kids to be savvy with money, to teach them how to budget. That all seems like a good thing. But the where does the money come from, and what should we do with it, and what does my school owe me? What does my government owe me? That, I think, is missing in the conversation.
Yeah. All right, Alton.
Yeah, so I'm so glad that Luke came on our show today, because he helped kind of put some structure around some really good ideas, I think. And honestly, as he was explaining this, I was really, attracted to this idea, and it's reminding me of some other things that I guess he's like my stepfather-in-law. Anyway, he does a lot of these for his church, he like goes into communities and he helps empower these communities. So he's like, just mostly with people, you know. So he'll go into a church and say, okay, what's going on in your neighborhood? Bring all of your people here and let's kind of count up how much money or assets we have, right? So Alton shows up and Alton's like, yeah, I can do some marketing and I can ride motorcycles and something, I don't know, grow a beard. And then somebody else, you know, Barbara shows up and she's like, I can write a book. And then John shows up and he's like, I'll wear a taco shirt, you know? And so then, sorry, man, I had to, okay, anyway, so we like kind of take inventory and then empower all of us to figure out, you know, like Barbara's like, yeah, I know how to write a book, but I don't know how to really get the word out. And I'm like, oh, well, I can help you, Barbara. And then John, you're like, Alton, you're not going to do anything. You need to hire people because you just sit around all day. And so now we have like with our powers combined, we have something that's better now and we're all better for it. And, so I thought that's really cool. But then, Barbara, you totally messed me up when you said that, you know, because I said it's just a tool, it's neutral. And you said, well, it doesn't matter because someone's going to pick that up. And whatever their philosophy is now with that tool. And so now I'm kind of like backing out of how in favor I was for this as far as whether or not, you know, teaching our children this is going to save the nation. And I'm going to say no, I don't think so. But I love this structure of teaching our children the right system, a good system, with the right philosophy. You know, we're not takers, we're creators. And based on what we've created together or whatever, this is how we're going to implement it. And so a little bit of backstory. When I was in high school, so I graduated in 2001. And back then, we didn't have a lot of these like fake turf football fields, like the ones with all the rubber. Now everyone uses it. It's safer, it's better. And there's all these reasons. Well, ours was like one of the first ones in Central Texas in Wimberley. And I literally went to the school board and we had all of these things that we were convincing the school board to vote to pass this bond so that we could get this new football field. And it had some like stadium renovations and the field. And so we looked at like, well, it's going to save water because we're watering this practice field and this one. And when this one gets muddy and then, you know, and then we're going to increase the revenue and then we're going to rent this football field out during the playoffs to other people. And so actually over time, by passing this bond and taking the money from the taxpayers, it's actually going to be profitable for us after, I don't know, I forget what it was, 5 or 10 years. It's going to actually end up saving us a lot of money in the long run conservatively. Until we were on this podcast today, I didn't realize like how much I learned throughout that process and how much empowered I was to actually help. Now, in doing that, we had all of this flack from all of the band people and all of the other people who, you know, didn't get this big, nice, well, it must be nice to play football. And I'm like, people are out parked on the road for this thing, guys. The community wanted this, and we kind of all banded together and did that. So I think it's really good for people to learn independence in their thought and to not get taken advantage of. I love the idea that it prevents corruption. And I think if more people did that younger with the right philosophy, that this is a good way to do it. And then in turn, I will give my little caveat to the ideas that kids growing up with the right philosophy and the right tools doing that, once they're the leaders in the leadership role, then they're going to be looking back with the philosophy of how can I get, you know, whatever, that 1% of the budget or whatever, how can I get them to contribute so that I'm still listening? Because I remember what that was like when people listened to me. And, you know, so, yeah, it's just like a two-way street at that point.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think this was a really good topic. I'm glad y'all joined me for the ride. Make sure you listeners out there that y'all check out the YouTube channel. make sure you're watching our videos. That way you can see our lovely faces, see the different reactions, play along with the show. Also, make sure you check out our social media. Keep the conversation going. Barb tends to post inappropriate things on there all the time, so make sure you check it out. Maybe that's me. I'm just trying to blame her for it. But also make sure we got some live events that we will be recording, so those will be posted online for you to check out, and that way you can see us screw up live and in your face. All right, guys. Anything y'all want to say before we go?
Nope.
Hey, keep sending the comments.
Yes. Love the comments. All right, guys. It was fun. I enjoyed it. Y'all say bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, we suck at ending them.
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize there was a chat going on.
Oh, really?
There's a chat
I missed
going on?
all of that. I'm really sorry. On the Zoom, it lights up and it's like flashing at me when there's something in there. And yeah.
Oh, there it
you know,
is.
There's a,
Yeah, you kept
Okay.
muting your mic, and I'm like, I see you cracking up over there, and I'm
it's
like,
so
there's...
windy. I'm like, you're going to have to edit a ton.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know we were chatting. Sorry.
It really won't be that bad. So when I
Okay.
edit through this thing, it has a background filter.
Okay.
Plus,
It just, here it
Most-
sounds really loud. And someone started mowing the lawn.
most of the time, it's like, if Alton's talking, for me to know when you make a sound or whatever, I can cut until I see your thing spike again.
Okay, I was trying to make it easier for you. I'll stop. I don't think I'm helping.
All right, guys, I got another date I got to
Hold on,
get
we gotta do
to.
the intro real quick.
Oh, the intro. I totally forgot.
All right. So it is a tease. It's don't give away everything. Anyone want to say much on the intro themselves? Because I don't want to say it all.
Alton does.
Alton does. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say how it's a great show. He's a great guest. And, man, hope you got your thinking hat on because we're going deep in this one.
All right, here we go. Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Deciding Factor podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Alton.
And Barb's here with us again today. How are you doing, Barb?
Doing good. Hi, guys.
So today's guest is Luke Hohmann, and he is going to be talking to us about giving money to kids and whether that might actually save democracy. And, of course, we've already done the show, so, Alton, what do you think of it?
Well, I'll have to admit that he used a lot of big words that I'm not really sure what he said, so I hope everyone's come prepared. You've had your coffee, and you're ready to go in deep on this one, and he's got a lot of good stuff to offer, and I think it was one of our more dynamic podcasts that we've had where we get a lot of back and forth here, and I like it, and I think if you're listening, you're going to enjoy it as well.
And if you're a big Barb fan, she goes head-to-head with Luke once or twice just to dig in and find out some answers to some questions.
So politely, so pleasantly. But that you're missing the important part of this show. From the beginning of the show to the end, Luke teaches us how to say the word participatory.
Yes.
Well, yeah. I heard John say it at the end, so I think it's real.
Yes.
I avoided saying it.
Yes.
Still avoiding
If you like
it.
tongue twisters, say it 10 times fast and let us know how it turns out. Make sure you record it and send it to us on Facebook or Instagram. We'd love to see it. All right, guys. Make sure you also check out our Deciding Factor Extra because Luke also joins us for a show on there. And we actually did a new segment. What was it, Barb?
Coulda, shoulda, woulda, where we solve the silliest things people have done. Yeah.
All right. Make sure you share your comments with us, and we will see you on this episode of The Deciding Factor.
This has been another episode of The Deciding Factor, giving you food for thought on real-life issues. Be sure to click, like, and subscribe to this podcast. as well as all your big social media outlets, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't forget to check out our website at thedecidingfactorpodcast.com and give us comments and feedback. Until next time, stay safe and remember to keep an open mind.